Welcome to the Selfie Reflections podcast. I'm Usha Raman. Each of the 4 episodes in this podcast series takes you into one specific chapter in our co-authored book, Digital Expressions of the Selfie, The Social Life of Selfies in India, published by Routledge. The book explores 5 different contexts of self-presentation in digital spaces, from making space for oneself on Instagram, to how selfies become units of surveillance in a digitalized nation, to claiming identity and presence in a city that is intent on marginalization, to how a selfie can outlive a person, and finally, to using objects to speak for oneself. The selfie is perhaps one of the most generative digital artifacts of our time. Join us as we reflect on it.
Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of our podcast. Today, we are going to talk about how places are redesigned to be more Insta-worthy. We have with us Mitra and Ankita Das, who have been closely associated with the project. A warm welcome to the both of you. So we are talking over a remote connection across different cities. Also, today is the day before Mahalaya, the first day of the 9-day Durga Puja festival, and in Calcutta, it is a huge thing. So please be prepared for some unintended noises. Thank you. This segment follows from an article co-authored by Dr. Abhishek Ray and myself, Neha Gupta. The title of the paper is Probing Insta-Worthiness, Citing the Selfie. The article looks at the Insta-worthiness of places, how places are designed to be ideal backdrops for clicking selfies. What we're trying to get at in the chapter and through this discussion is how are Insta-worthy places made and consumed, and what ramifications does showcasing the self in such places have for the perception of the identity both of the place and the self in question. A Calcutta-bound influencer recently made news by dancing on the Ma flyover in Kolkata. They did this in response to the UP government using the photograph of the flyover in question in their advertisement entitled Transforming UP under Yogi Adityanath, published in the Indian Express on 12 September 2021. The space is identifiably Kolkata because of the blue and white colors of the flyover and the iconic Kolkata yellow cab visible in the picture. This sparked controversy not only because of the falsity of the image, but also because of the hostility between the Bharatiya Janata Party, to which Adityanath belongs, and Trinamool Congress, the ruling party of West Bengal, of which Calcutta is the capital. These hostilities peaked during a bitter and hotly contested election earlier this year. This place is reconfigured through its usage in the advertisement by the UP government. It loses its locative and geographic specificity and becomes a generic infrastructural element repurposed to convey a particular notion of development. Sandy Shaha, who performed at the flyover, very intentionally used the song Dilwalo ke dil ka karar lootne, main aayi hu UP Bihar lootne, to parody the UP government. They kept saying in Bangla while shooting the video that this is not Kolkata, this is UP. This disassociative parodying is a reclaiming of the space. The assemblage of the audio, peppered with Bengali, and Shaha's performance identifies and locates the backdrop. It identifies the place through a performativity of the self. With this rather long introduction, I now invite Ankita Das, who is our research assistant, and Mitra, one of our respondents, to speak more to this co-constitution of the performative self and place.
Hi, I'm Ankita. I'm from Calcutta. I'd just come to the city because I had been studying in Delhi, finishing my master's. I was introduced to this project in line with my work as a research associate to Neha Gupta. And I was particularly interested to participate in this study because here she was dealing with spaces not only as concrete categories, but how spaces come into form and how spaces are constituted through human interaction, through human processes. And this is something that has always interested me, being a student of sociology. And it is in line with this that I wanted to talk about my experiences.
Hi everyone, so this is Mo, and I think I was involved with this particular project from, I don't know, when Neha mentioned this, that she has kind of discussed this paper with Abhishek and she was going to work on this. So from that first research, because we are complete foodies in Kolkata and we do the roundabouts of all the new joints of cafes and restaurants together any which way, and at that point in time she was actually living in Silchar and I was in Kolkata, so whenever she would come over, so this was what we did, and then this became a research paper, so it was like her work and us having fun together. So yes, this was an amazing project to be part of from the get-go, and very interesting paper. That is why I wanted to be, I think that it was an early phase when lockdown was slowly being removed last year, when we started individual cafe research, as she was going to do Reiki and ask questions, interview people. So I was in most cases I was part of it. The reference point was that of space and people taking selfies and associating them with that space. I think I remember it from when cities, especially in India, Starbucks was opening up, and people, I would notice that it was a very strange phenomenon to me that people would visit Starbucks, and of course, coffee is not cheap there. They would pay those exorbitant amount for one single cup of coffee, but they were not interested in either, Starbucks. Yes, they were kind of interested in Starbucks, but they were not really interested in the coffee. But to get the cup with the name written on it and then take a selfie and make a post out of it in social media, and that was to me quite a shocker that is this the reason people visit Starbucks? Because I'm not a coffee person, so I don't understand this. But yes, as Neha told that what are some of the personal references that I can think of. I remember all my friends or all the people in social media whom I know, and everyone went. All the bloggers, of course, and everyone was doing this, and that was interesting. That you're going to a cafe, and it's almost like you have arrived. Kind of like a status. This thing that okay, I have been to Starbucks, and I had a cup where my name was written, and I have taken that selfie. So that was Starbucks. But a more recent, I would say personal experience would be, I would say just about a week or so back. I was aware of this new cafe opening up for quite some time, and I wanted to go there. But it's called Boma Bakery, and it is a Japanese Korean themed bakery which has opened up recently. And if you are someone who's familiar, I am someone who is crazy about Japanese and Korean culture, the whole sort of Korean films and so Boma is a Japanese and Korean themed cafe, and if you are familiar with the kind of Haiyu culture and Japanese anime and the food that is very familiar with which you get like sushi and whatnot. So there the theme is pastel shades, and I one of the things that I did was I prepared before actually I went there, so that my photos came out insta worthy. So that is a more recent example that I can think of.
So, Mom, when you say that you prepared to go to a cafe to make your images Insta worthy, what can you speak a little more to that? What exactly do you mean by it? What exactly do you do?
So if you check the Facebook page of Boma Bakery, you will instantly realize that it is not. It's very unlike any other normal run-of-the-mill bakery, because there is a specific theme, and the theme being the kind of anime-like anime-like sort of sceneries, and there are cherry blossom trees, and the shade combinations are all very light pastels. So my thought was that if I wear a very stark, bright color or something like that, that wouldn't look nice in that kind of background. So I had to choose either like a white, which is which will go nicely with any of the pastel shades, or highlight one of the particular colors. I think there was green, blue, and pink and yellow. Those are the light shades. So choose something which kind of goes with that entire sort of theme. How Japanese ball jointed dolls wear the kind of clothes that they wear. So it's very specific. So of course that kind of clothes I can't get, but at least the color of the dress, so that it looks nice when it comes out in the photos. So that is something I myself did, and I'm sure a lot of other people are doing the same things actually.
And Ankita, have you done something like this? Something like what Mom just described, preparing to go to a cafe to match, say, the setting of the venue? Like, it could be any venue. It had any place, any identifiable place.
When we visit a space, when we visit a place, we always have some kind of idea that how that place is supposed to be, what are the kind of people that visit such spaces, what are the politics, what is the politics of such space. So when we talk about the social setting of a space, we talk about the various processes that constitute that space. We talk about what kind of people belong to such spaces or go to such spaces. So it's never possible that we go to some place without having any idea about it. Our conduct, our behavior kind of get conditioned by the space that we are about to be a part of, and vice versa. So I remember 2 years from now, I was attending the Delhi Pride. The pandemic was not a reality back then. So everybody was out on the streets, fully expressing themselves and displaying their identities, their social and sexual identities. And being a cishet woman, I was made aware of my identity, of my sexuality. And when I saw people around me, people belonging to different sexualities, different identities, and the spectrum was countless, when I saw such varied expressions of the self, I was reminded that maybe in our everyday, in our mundane setting, when we are probably visiting a marketplace or whatever place it might be, public places, of course, such visibility, such varied range of expressions of the self happens in the passing. We don't really get to see them that much. Even we are not even made, even sometimes we are not even aware, not aware but conscious of our own identities. So it was during the Pride March that I was made conscious. And you would see people carrying certain signifiers, certain signs, symbols, certain kind of gestures. So all of that kind of became very starkly visible and intense during the Pride March, which otherwise I don't think you would see that much in the passing. And people also were much more comfortable expressing themselves. So I think this particular experience had been really empowering and made me aware of the personal and the public mechanism and the workings of space.
I think one of the things that comes to mind when Durga Puja and getting sort of ready is concerned. One thing, even the days of Durga Puja and what you wear on the day actually is kind of there there is, I wouldn't call it a theme, but there is the fact that Ashtami, which is the 8th day of the puja, is the most important day as far as fashion is concerned, as far as how you look is concerned. Okay, so whatever you buy, the best dress or the best sari or the best, or how you look, your hairstyle, your you should look the best on Ashtami. So that is, and of course then followed by Navami. So it is like Ashtami should be number 1, and then Navami is number 2, and then Saptami can kind of be 3, and Shoshti, which is just the start of the puja. Okay, that can be one of those the kurti you last ordered. It's like that. So Durga Puja is also like Diwali. I think is you wear something for the day. So it's a single day and you wear the best on the same, that day itself. But Durga Puja, because we have 5 days at least, so from the very young age, we knew that we are getting 10 dresses. So 1 for the morning and 1 for the evening. And for example, even Ashtami morning, the ideal thing to wear is something in white. That is the, kind of the color that is associated with Ashtami morning. Maybe white with red, the red par. But if you are someone who is not wearing a sari, it can just be white, so that, it is associated with offering Pushpanjali. And in the evening, it is just the opposite. You wear your brightest and your best, and of course, clicking picture is very much part of going out and celebrating pujas. So that kind of fits in. So yes, definitely, puja is a time which is defined by not only what you wear, but also what you wear on what day of the celebration.
So exactly, so this becomes like there's a chronology, so to speak, to expressing yourself, to expressing your identity during the pujas, which is also very specific and located and geographical in the sense, because this is very, like, it is bounded, like it is connected to Calcutta. So this whole thing is very, even if you're doing it outside India, even I'm sure the very large Bengali diaspora does this too. Even if you're doing it outside India, it kind of immediately connects this whole kind of chronology of identity and looks that you define that people follow during the Durga Puja. I think that, like, it connects people to Kolkata in a certain way, this kind of identity expression. Maharashtra, Mumbai does something similar. They have a similar chronology of looks. The colors are pre-decided. The list of colors to be worn on specific days is published in newspapers, and people follow these guidelines. So this temporality of identities, that the identity that you're supposed to express on various days of Navratri is pre-given. It is something that is also very specific to a place. It is specific to Mumbai. It's very geographic. It is located. Very similar to what happens in Kolkata. So I think though these spaces celebrate the same festival very differently, but I think they are bound, they're connected by the ways in which they want to express identity, the ways in which they kind of create a chronicity of identity expressions.
When we talk about temporality of spaces, the aspect of time when it comes to spaces, I think the memories that we develop through our course of growing up and socializing, the memories that we have of particular spaces and the memories that we have consolidated in us throughout our years of experiencing spaces, they play a very important role. And to give an example, I think Durga Puja for Bengalis, I think, will ring universally with all Bengalis. So I remember I had been in Delhi for quite some time, and growing up in Calcutta, I would be excited like everybody else for Pujo to arrive, and I was very much aware, and I was very much well versed with the itineraries, what to wear on what days, what rituals to observe, all of that. So meeting friends, meeting families, going to this place, going to that place. So everything would be pre-planned. But once I shifted to Delhi, things looked pretty grim because that time of October, which is otherwise celebrated as Durga Puja in Calcutta, looked very different in Delhi because we used to have our semester exams right after that period. So it was not so enjoyable for us, and we also didn't have the luxury of traveling to Kolkata at that time. So it used to be pretty sad for most bongs, but we had our ways of negotiating with such limitations, and also what I said, memories, relive the memories and also conduct ourselves accordingly. So I remember when the whole of Delhi that time would look mundane, absolutely like usual days, people traveling in metro, going to work, going to college, office, whatever. Few of us would be fully decked, wearing saris, full Bengali attire, bindi, all of that. You wouldn't see such scenes that often in a place like Delhi. We would take the metro from North Delhi, which is basically the university space, the student area. From there, we would travel down to the Bengali colony towards South Delhi to celebrate Durga Puja. If not celebrate, just to take, just to feel the air of puja around us. We wouldn't have the luxury of staying for too long because we had to study. But we just used to travel that distance to get that feel, to get that air and feel closer to our homes and not feel that bad because we would see photos on Facebook, Instagram from Calcutta, people from Calcutta posting about pujo, enjoying, having fun. It was not so possible, but we had our ways, and we didn't let our memories just go in the passing, but we made efforts to live them in our own ways at a different space. And the Bengali colony in Delhi used to get very vibrant and colorful during that time, and it didn't really feel that we were far from our homes because you could experience the same food, the same khichdi, which is the staple during pujo. The smell of dhuno and incense sticks, women clad in saris, men in kurtas. So the scene was very similar, but the place was different. But because how people conducted themselves in such spaces, we didn't really feel that we missed out on the festival. But even apart from festivals, if we talk about our mundane settings, the way we would go to a funeral or the way we would go to a wedding and even a marketplace, all of that is very different. We wouldn't conduct ourselves similarly in all places. So I think the context of where we are going, what we are supposed to be doing, the event, the context, all of that addresses the way we approach a particular space. And it in turn adds to the element of that space, the characteristics of that space.
So, of course we know now, and it is very evident that spaces are designed, like our homes, our own homes, we are designing them with, say, Instagram in mind. And more specifically now, when we do Zoom calls, when we are the whole world is locked into their own homes and we are doing Zoom calls, etc., I'm very particular about the background. When I am doing a video, when I know that I'll turn my video on, I'm very particular of the background that will be visible on Zoom. So, this entire space is then reconfigured for a certain kind of visibility, visibility of myself. Like I will not show the messy corner of my house. It has to be, I mean, of course, some people choose to kind of completely obfuscate the background, but I don't do that. But like, I'll not show a messy corner of my house. I'll make sure that my laptop is located in a place which is neat and tidy and clean and has like something nice visible in the background. So do you people do things like this? How, like, I mean, I'm sure all of us have been kind of forced to kind of think about backdrops in the era of doing work through Zoom.
I think that one moment where we had to consciously negotiate between our public and personal lives and also our public and personal spaces was during our online classes in the backdrop of the pandemic. So we would remember that there used to be professors who would request us to turn our cams on, and in a normal situation we would be sitting with our professors in our classrooms, which is essentially a public place, but the same setting, when it was kind of forced into our private lives, it looked like an imposition. And when we would be asked to turn our cams on, we would become conscious of our home environment. And a lot of us do not belong to the same socioeconomic background, where we would have a room of our own and the luxury to organize and settle in spaces of our choices. So it became difficult for a lot of us, and when we were asked to turn our cams on, we faced dilemmas as to how are we going to conduct ourselves, because here we were trying to here we were sitting in our personal spaces and trying to do our public lives. So it became difficult for a lot of us.
So how do you particularly perform yourself, especially your professional self, in a personal space, in your personal geography? So that is an interesting dynamic that Ankita is trying to bring out. Mom, do you want to speak to that?
I'm not someone who likes green walls clearly, because that's not my color. But then with Zoom, green wall is the wall you should have, because then you can think that this is a natural chroma setting and you can make anything out of your backdrop. So yes, depending on what kind of meeting it is, and what frame of mind I am in and how much effort I am willing to put in at that point in time, I do think about because this color really helps me as well, because I can just about and I'm someone who knows a little bit of Photoshop as well. So those two combination really works. So yes, during a really really serious meeting, I do make make an effort. Of course, that includes how I'm personally looking as well. It's not always how my backdrop is looking, but then the classes where I am also a professor. So when I am teaching myself, I do think of either I am off camera, or if I am on camera, then yes, I do think of what my backdrop is, whether there is any clutter, as Neha mentioned. Yes, the clutter is totally a no-no. It should all look very pristine and very presentable, or if it is a very specific meeting, then a backdrop which is sort of targeted for that meeting or for that audience is what I think of. Yeah.
So how, we have discussed all of this. We have discussed how spaces are configured, reconfigured, remade. We have discussed how identities are performed in a chronology. We are the temporality of identity. I think now we should talk about the very deliberate embedding of aesthetic elements into spaces for photographic performativity. For instance, there's a cafe that we refer to in the paper, which is called Cafe I Can Fly. Now, the pathway that leads to the cafe has these very interesting design elements painted on the walls. We have used one of those elements in our paper, which are wings. So they're very deliberately designed and crafted wings painted on the wall, and people often pose against them. So it has sort of become like a template for the performance of the self, for clicking a very specific picture of yourself to express a particular identity of yourself, which is, equating yourself to freedom, to kind of mobility, etc., etc. So have others come across, I found this very interesting. So have others come across these very specific design elements that are like part of spaces just for the sake of performing the self.
There are always certain identifiers and markers of spaces. Like, it could be anything tangible, it could be anything. Like, for me, it was the wall art in my college, Ambedkar University, which became an integral part of the university. So that space was something which gave away to people that you are in Ambedkar University. So this was this was a particular wall near, I think, the Gender Studies department. While there was a blanket ban on wall art in our college, this was the wall that was allowed for such activities to take place. And you could say that the administration only allowed this space to be used fully by the students to express themselves. I could see a lot of people taking a photograph in front of the wall or clicking a selfie, posting it on social media. So that gave away that they were in this particular college, in this particular campus. And when the whole university space would be, this unsure space of self-expression, this was the wall where people would express themselves, express their politics, their ideas full-fledgedly without the fear of being punished or charged, fined and whatever. So this was one instance, and this wall, which was really vibrant in the entire campus. The second one was the Wall of Democracy in Delhi University. Delhi University also has some restrictions on students sticking bills on the walls or painting street art and all of that. But there was this wall, there was this stretch which was not like really long, but it was pretty much visible because it throughout the year it used to be full of posters. So this was called the Wall of Democracy. So you would see literally everything stuck on the wall, like posters of upcoming protest march, musical and theatrical events, talks, street corners, everything. So this was something where people would, this was the place where people would notice in order to be updated about student activities and student politics and all of that. And this was called, it was because of this reason that this was called the Wall of Democracy. So these are the two examples that I have in my mind. But one particular thing that struck me was when I went back to Ambedkar to take back my stuff just before the beginning of the second wave. And I noticed that the whole campus was whitewashed. Not that it was never whitewashed, but that was the wall, that was the area actually, which was very vibrant and colorful. But then I noticed that that area was whitewashed as well. So it struck me. So the whole, the memories of people standing in front, clicking photos and selfies, just to feel the university vibe. All of that was there, but it was just gone in a matter of time because nobody was there in the campus. So yeah, I think the wall which was there to serve a purpose ended up serving multiple purposes.
So I mean, again, like this dissonance between the designing of the place, I think the post-pandemic designing of the place, and the larger identity it has, which is this kind of contestation is very interesting for me. So I think that what we can gauge from this is that there's more to research on the post-pandemic alterity of spaces. I think this is how we should carry on this research. Like, we have talked about the very deliberate designing of spaces for the performance of the self, but I think now we should focus on how the pandemic altered spaces, repurposed spaces. It was not deliberately done, but I think it sort of automatically happened.
So I think it's interesting because it is also opening up a lot of segmentation in terms of design is defining choices of people and the places they visit, because it is not anymore of course for instance, when we were younger, we would think of a cafe as in coffee house, which is a very well-known place in Kolkata, and that is how we defined a space like cafe. But in today's world, and in everything is so different. For example, there is this space called Mrs. Magpie, which is a tea room themed cafe, which has been designed with, again, very specific Instagram worthy kind of this thing. So people who like tea rooms, and so that's their natural choice, because that's not it's not really a cafe. It's promoting more a sense of the British style of having tea, and sort of afternoon, like a tea break, and it's everything is very dainty and pretty, and small pastries and things like that are served there. So everything is designed around that theme itself. And then people are also choosing to visit that place, and of course taking pictures and sort of associating with that place itself. So you are defining your choices as per design in in a lot of way. So whether it is a place like Mrs. Magpie, or another place like Cafe Artsy, where it's more of a book lover's domain and an art lover's domain. So you will see paintings by upcoming artists hanging on the walls, and you can purchase them out there. And there are racks of books which are just kind of again catering to a certain sensibility, a certain aesthetic, which are kept over there for you to kind of browse through or read while you spend your time there. So again, it is design, and that space is really defining what you are doing there. It's not always necessary that you are going there just to grab a cup of coffee. It is also that entire experience.
And I'll just take one element from what Mom said, and I think that will be the perfect place to end this conversation, which is coffee house. Coffee house is very closely connected to, so to speak, the history of Calcutta. I mean, and coffee house has been the venue for liberal ideas, for the coming together of various kinds of ideological viewpoints. However, coffee house was recently they remade coffee house in Newtown Rajarhat. So I mean, and there's a huge difference in the coffee house which is originally housed in on College Street and the coffee house in Newtown. So I think it just kind of speaks to what we are trying to say. What, the whole Instagrammability of, or the Insta-worthiness of spaces. I think this reconfiguring of the coffee house is, I think, I think it is the greatest evidence of the fact that spaces are now kind of just redesigned and repurposed, reshaped, rehashed to look Insta-worthy. And I think this is a good point to end this conversation. There's so much more to say to this, but I think we at some point of time we'll have to wrap it up. I think this gives us something to think about, like something as iconic and as historic as coffee house has kind of been repurposed to fulfill the to fulfill the selfie taker's wish. Thank you, Mom, and thank you, Ankita, for being a part of this project, and especially Mom, because you have been associated with this project since its inception, since this was a thought in my mind which I had expressed to both Abhishek and to you. So, and thank you, Ankita, for for all the help that you have lent to this project.
Thank you, Neha, for introducing me to the study and making me add my share of experiences to it. I really liked it, and I hope the project goes really well. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, truly. This was an interesting conversation as well.
Thank you, Mom and Ankita, for being a part of the project. I hope we have been able to draw out how places are changing in the interest of mobile photography. This topic and our larger project on selfies have been explored in great detail in our upcoming monograph. We are also launching a website soon. Do follow us on Instagram for more information related to the project. We are available at Digital Expressions of the Self. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Selfie Reflections podcast. This is the first of 4 episodes. Do check out the rest. And if you'd like to read our book, Digital Expressions of the Selfie, The Social Life of Selfies in India, it's out now. Feel free to find us on Instagram and tell us about the new Insta-worthy places in your city or town.